we're going to go and try a new approach this week in the way we order our playlist, and we're going to more or less go chronologically through date of composition. So we're going to start with an old friend of ours, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, Mozart was a courageous composer in many ways, changing the form of the symphony and his chamber music, and especially through his operas, which were really genre-defining. But he was also courageous in the face of the prevailing political winds in Europe at the time. You see, in Europe in the late 19th century, most composers composed under the patronage of some rich and influential person. For example, Mozart was in the employ, before he came to Vienna, of the Archbishop of Salzburg in Austria. Haydn was in the employ and under the patronage of the Esterhazy family. Mozart wanted more freedom, and he emancipated himself from the patronage of his former master. And he was living and working and composing in Vienna, all in the shadow of the French Revolution in 1789. And he came across this very, very popular play, this trilogy of plays, in fact, that was sweeping Europe at the time, and it was, of course, the Figaro trilogy. We know, of course, Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, but other operas that have taken the inspiration from Beaumarchais' wonderful and inspiring and humorous and subversive text. In any case, in Vienna of the early 1780s and the mid-1780s, there was an edict against the performance of any of Beaumarchais' Figaro trilogy because it poked fun at the aristocracy. It elevated the working man, it elevated the peasant in such a way that fomented this spirit of revolution that was just bubbling away under the surface, that was about to explode in the events in France in 1789. And so in 1786, Mozart decided he wanted to compose an opera on the Marriage of Figaro. Somehow he wheedled his way around the emperor and got permission with his partner in crime, Lorenzo da Ponte, who's a very interesting man, and maybe we'll go into more details about his colourful life in another episode. And together, they produced Le Nozze di Figaro, the Marriage of Figaro. Mozart wrote the music, and da Ponte wrote the words, or the libretto. Now, of course, everybody knows the overture of the Marriage of Figaro and several famous arias, but not all of us are familiar with the story. In fact, sometimes when I conduct the piece, I forget the story. There's so many twists and turns. But let's see if I can summarize it. Count Almaviva is married to the Countess Almaviva. Figaro is his manservant, and he is betrothed to be married to Susanna. Well, of course, the Count actually wants Susanna. He's a bit of a libertine, and he has a wandering eye and a wandering hand. Even though Susanna is married to Figaro, and so this leads to all kinds of problems. In the scene we're about to see, the Count has arrived in Susanna's chambers to try and seduce her. But before the Count got there, Cherubino, the page boy, who really is in love with the Count's wife, the Countess, was there first in Susanna's room for advice. So you've got Susanna in her chamber, in her room. Cherubino comes to talk, get some advice on seducing the Count's wife. The Count comes in, Cherubino hides, and then Basilio, the music master, who doesn't know about the Count's philandering ways, at least not this very instant, walks in. So the Count has to hide. Basilio lets a few things slip, especially the fact that Cherubino wants the Countess. The Count is outraged and reveals himself and recounts the tale of Cherubino trying to seduce other girls. In the event of recounting this tale, he picks up a tablecloth, and underneath it is none other than Cherubino. He is furious. Now, of course, it took great courage for Mozart to write music like this that directly poked fun at the aristocracy, that made the Count look like an imbecile, looked like an ass. But musically, it's so interesting in that Mozart characterizes each of the three voices in totally different ways, while the Count is fuming. His music is imperious and angry, sang by the baritone voice.
Cosa sento? Ostonnate, mi scacciate, il seduttor.
Basilio is a weedly sort of tenor. He's smarmy and he's scheming, and that's reflected in the music. And Susanna is really under duress. She's breathless and she keeps trying to juggle and keep all the balls in the air, and that's also reflected in the music.